In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, welcome, friends, to the 37th episode of Crime and Punishment, a legal podcast, not a political one. We have no opinions on politics here at Crime and Punishment. This is the official podcast of the Invictus Law Firm, PA, a criminal defense law firm in Orlando, Florida, the website for which is augustusinvictus.com. We have a newsletter. We have a bunch of social media. It's all in the description, more or less. Please do go through there and subscribe to everything, and we will get to you on that. We have a lot of news today. Let me see what I promised to talk about. Tiger will not be with us today, unfortunately. He has actual work to do. Let's see what I promised we were going to talk about today. I said we would talk about prison infrastructure. The Intercept has a series of articles about prison infrastructure and how bad it is. We've got the combination of civil suits and criminal charges in Lawfare and the latest terrorism advisory bulletin. That's what I said that we were going to talk about. And, you know, if you're into that kind of boring stuff, fine, but I really want to start off strong. I want to start off with like some actually interesting news, not all that boring garbage. And this is from Fox News. And thank God for Fox, they've got the real news. So here's what's leading today. Published today, February 18th. Kelly Clarkson files petition to change her legal name. The talk show host says her requested new name more fully reflects who I am. So she is going to be changing her name from Kelly Clarkson to Kelly Brienne. I think that's clearly the biggest news of the day. It brings to mind bread and circuses from the old Roman days. You keep the people distracted, and they won't revolt against you. Give them bread, make sure they're well fed, make sure they've got their welfare. You give them circuses, entertainment, gladiator fights, pay-per-view MMA. Kelly Clarkson, who, by the way, no, that was Carrie Underwood. I can never tell the difference. I don't know. One of these women, these blonde pop stars, was on season 4 of Cobra Kai. You give people Cobra Kai, they will not revolt because it's such a good show that you have to watch all 40 hours of it. Or are you even culturally literate? So I think that's clearly the biggest news of the day. Let's talk about, prison infrastructure, Trump. Let's talk about Trump. Not that we have anything to do with politics. This is a purely legal analysis. So we talked today about Lawfare, right? I have been called here the professor of Lawfare. Lawfare is just... it's exactly what it sounds like. It's waging war by the use of the legal system, right? This was really done well to Richard Nixon. Nixon was obviously impeached. They went after him hard. He left office. Whole constitutional crisis about it. And that, it didn't stop there. A lot of people think, well, they drove him out of office, game over. The liberals won. And then, progress continued on. And they didn't just stop with getting him out of office. Nixon was later disbarred from the Supreme Court. He was a very famous lawyer before he became president. And they went after him forever. It's not enough to just get you out of office. They have to destroy you personally. They have to make an example of you so that no one will ever be stupid enough to challenge the system like that again. That was a long time ago, I guess. He left office, 1973, if I recall correctly. So maybe Trump was too young to remember the lesson. He did exactly what Nixon did. That was stupid. Driven out of office, We're not saying the election was stolen, YouTube. Do not give us another strike. We never said that. We love Big Brother as much as the next guy. We have no opinions on elections or political processes. What we're saying is there are legal ramifications. When you are taken out of office through the legal means of electioneering, that's not the end of it. It's not enough to just defeat you. It's not enough to have someone else come into the office. There is the ever-looming threat that Trump could run for president again in 2024. I don't know how realistic that is, but that's, at least out there in the ether. But even if he wasn't, even if, like Richard Nixon, there was no way it was even possible for him to come back into office, they're still going to destroy you personally, right? So one headline from Newsweek is, Trump boxed in after New York judge's ruling he must testify. Legal experts. Legal experts say Donald Trump is running out of options after a judge ruled on Thursday that the former president and two of his adult children, Ivanka and Donald Jr., must answer questions under oath as part of New York Attorney General Letitia James's investigation into his business practices. So one of the things they do is they combine criminal and civil charges to destroy you. These are ostensibly separate because, oh, look at this horrible person. He's got all of these different things going on. This person's suing from this quarter of the country. This person's pressing charges against him in this quarter of the country. Absolutely no connection between them, of course, officially. But it's a long-standing tactic of lawfare that you press charges against a man, you destroy his name, you go after him in the criminal courts. While he's dealing with that, having been taken down, you then go after him civilly. You go after his bar licenses, like they did Richard Nixon. You go after his business interests, like they have Trump. If none of that works, what do? You resort to prosecution 101. You go after their family. This is a tried and true tactic of prosecutors. This is a tried and true tactic of bureaucrats. Tried and true tactic of leftists. I know I'm repeating myself, but these are all different categories of scumbags who use people's families against them. They will turn your spouse against you. They will take your children from you. They will attack your children. I don't remember the guy's name, but General Flynn, I recall they went after his son. That was a pretty famous case several years back. They went after his son, and I guess the deal was you're either going to plead guilty to these things or we're going to take your son down. And obviously what father is going to allow his son to take the fall for him? Not that it doesn't happen, but obviously General Flynn had honor. So if you're going after Trump, it's not enough to drive him out of office, not enough to destroy his business interests, drive him out of golf. I remember one ridiculous thing after he had lost the election or after the inauguration, one of those two, was it PGA, was trying to ban any Trump-affiliated businesses. Just crazy. That can't keep somebody like Trump down. So you go after his kids. You go after Ivanka and Donald. Can't take the man out. You go after his kids. That's how it goes. So what's interesting, especially about the panem et circuses, the bread and circuses, right, of the Romans. I remember when I was in high school, and I took Latin for 3 years, and part of the Latin curriculum was learning Roman mythology, Roman government, so on and so forth. And I remember people used to, and still do, to a degree, they used to say, well, those people were so stupid. all the emperor had to do was just give them food and entertain them, and they didn't know that they were slaves. Unbelievable. I mean, we live in America. That could never happen here, right? That was the dogma at the time. Of course, we had defeated the Soviet Union, and America was a different place back then, even under Clinton. Not that I'm making political commentary, just historical commentary. This is a long time ago. I have no opinion on how things are turning out right now. But we all looked back on ancient Rome and thought, man, these fools, these people, man, all you had to do is throw bread and circuses at them and they stay quiet. Fast forward to the age of Netflix, and you think about ancient Rome again. You think about ancient societies. Think about Alexander the Great, right? And how he came to the throne, and how politics was in Macedonia at the time, with brothers murdering brothers, fathers murdering sons, and vice versa. I mean, just absolutely vicious. You could not stay on the throne because someone in your family was going to kill you, right? Medieval politics, a lot of family feuds going on. And we in America, we having a republic that works, of course, we look back on these ancient and medieval barbaric practices. We look back on how could these families control so much and have so much power? You know, shouldn't this be left to the people? And thank God we do that here in this republic. We look back and think, why would families have so much power? Why would people try to murder people in their own families? Why would people attack other families? Why would we have vendettas? What a disgusting practice, the Sicilian vendetta. Families killing families, people going after each other. This isn't personal. This is a republic, right? We're all in this together. We have a common government for the common good. And yet, here we are. Here we are. New York attorney generals investigating a man's children because they don't like the man. I'm sure she has legal grounds. I'm sure this is not a frivolous lawsuit. I'm sure the investigation is 100% legitimate. They've crossed all their T's and dotted all their I's to make sure that no one could possibly accuse them of going after the man's children maliciously. They are, after all, federal prosecutors, and federal prosecutors are, I have to say, a high caliber of attorney. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of attorneys in multiple different fields, every level of government, and I've got to say, federal prosecutors, they do have a great sense of professionalism. But I think the facts speak for themselves. They have been trying to take Trump out for, what year is it even? 7 years now? They've been trying to destroy this man. And here we are. Let's investigate his children. That was from Newsweek. This one's from CNN. Analysis: Trump's legal woes deepen and could bring new political trouble. Again, we don't care about politics on this program. What we care about is that phrase, legal woes, right? He might say he's the master of the art of the deal, but Donald Trump's real superpower is his talent for wriggling out of accountability after sailing close to the law and normal rules of politics, business, and life in a way that would have destroyed most public figures long ago. This is by Stephen Collinson. This is an analysis. I like that term, analysis. That used to be called opinion, right? We used to have news and an opinion section, or at least editorial section, or something to that effect. Now it's called analysis. That gives it a lot more credibility, right? That makes it a lot more factual, a lot more real. It's not just this man's opinion. This guy, Stephen Collinson, who's writing for CNN, I have no idea who he is, but he must be an expert if he's writing for CNN. Expert in what? I don't know. He's writing for CNN, and this is an analysis. Boy, this got some weight to it. His real superpower is his talent for wriggling out of accountability. You know, right there, this is not news. This is an analysis. Not that I care. I don't know Trump. Never met the man. Never done me any favors. But I think it's pretty clear by the language of this, someone here has an axe to grind. However, says Mr. Collinson, after Trump bounced back following a lifetime of business bankruptcies, scandals, and impeachments, by the way, please use the Oxford comma. If you're not using the Oxford comma, you are wrong. All right? I wish I'd brought up that. I really need like an assistant on this program, like to, like Howard Stern had Robin, like, hey, could you bring up this thing? Joe Rogan's got whoever Joe Rogan's got. Hey, can you bring up this video? Because there's a meme out there of JFK and Stalin and strippers, and it shows you the difference between the Oxford comma and this ridiculous thing where people just leave out the comma in the last part of the series. That drives me nuts. Bankruptcies, comma, scandals, comma, and impeachments. It might soon be time to consider whether the ex-president's flair for impunity is starting to fail him after a string of legal defeats tightened a net of scrutiny about him. In the latest blow, on Thursday, a judge in New York ruled that Trump and his eldest two children, Donald Jr. and Ivanka, must sit for depositions in the New York Attorney General's civil probe into their business practices. It was far from Trump's only recent rough day in court. While he appears to be slipping deeper into a legal swamp, some obvious caveats are in order. This guy is not gloating at all. Pretty much everyone who has bet that Trump's run-ins with the law, truth, comma, Mr. Collinson, law, truth, and reality would doom his career have been proved wrong ever since his riotous entry into the 2016 presidential campaign. And his refusal to live by the rules that govern everyone else is, in fact, a key ingredient of his political appeal for millions of voters. And so on and so forth. So that's a third aspect of lawfare. Well, we've talked about several. I won't bother to keep numbering them. 1, press criminal charges. You've seen that over and over and over. They tried to charge him with January 6th. They tried to charge him with insurrection. They've tried to push charges now for flushing documents down the White House toilet. Anything. I think one was like an underage girl accused him of something in New York. Anything they can. Charge this man criminally. Get him in the criminal system. Because everybody knows, even if the charges don't stick, even if they're completely false charges, it will drag you down for years. You'll be caught in that mire. Simultaneously, file civil litigation against him. That's what the New York Attorney General's office is doing right now, and I'm sure hundreds of other people across the country. I mean, Trump is no stranger to lawsuits. Any billionaire has lawsuits coming at him all the time, I'm sure. And as I mentioned earlier, he's got a lot of business interests that have been affected by politics. So they've been going after business interests, lots of lawsuits there. But now these lawsuits are designed to be personal. And now another aspect of lawfare, drag the family into it. I had mentioned last week Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War. And I really think that's a history book that everyone should read. One of the most important things about that book is it details the Allies' strategy of breaking the morale of the civilian populace, right? There were discussions about where should we bomb. Dresden's obviously possibly the most notorious aspect of Allied bombing. But there were actual discussions of, should we bomb suburban neighborhoods? And as I recall, the consensus was against bombing suburban neighborhoods, not because it would deliberately murder civilians, but because people had backyards. People had acreage. It would waste ordnance. In other words, the bombs would be better spent on more densely populated areas. If you started bombing neighborhoods with people with houses, with fences and yards and stuff, you're going to waste a lot of explosive power. You might not kill enough people. Instead, bomb something like Dresden. Bomb a place where there's a lot of people packed in together. You get maximum kill, maximum destruction of civilian morale, right? That's just one aspect of this this sort of strategy to divide and conquer, to break up the core of a group. So you start attacking a man's family. I sincerely doubt, and I hope that it's not the case. I sincerely doubt that Donald Jr. or Ivanka would ever turn on their father. That would be an just unbelievable disgrace. But I'm sure it would naturally cause a lot of conflict within the family, and a lot of morale would be lessened with this sort of thing going on, which is exactly the point. You strike at the core, you strike at the supporting characters to get to the man you're after. Lawfare 101. All of that was preceded by me listing number 3 as media. So you're talking about civil action combined with criminal action. You're talking about attacking the family, especially the children. The other aspect of all this is the media. The media has been, I think it's fair to say, driving a lot of this. Not just complicit in the lawfare against Trump, but they have been driving it. So that's why you can log in, just type the name Trump in, and you'll see CNN, MSNBC, who is this? MSN, Newsweek, all of these articles gloating about Trump's legal woes. Because the New York Attorney General knows that all they got to do is, I won't be vulgar, they just got to give them a whiff, and they just got to give a whiff, and the media stations will come running to publish all of this. Whether it's defamation or not, I don't think it is, because all the media is doing is reporting what the New York Attorney General is saying, and that doesn't make them liable. It's not defamation, it's just reporting the facts, and allegedly he did this, allegedly he did that. That's never defamation, right? So if you have the media with which to work hand in glove, you have the ultimate vehicle for lawfare. Because a lot of it comes down to the court of public opinion. A lot of prosecutors are, let's back the truck up there and talk about the other way around. I've seen a prosecutor or two accusing a defendant, a criminal defendant, or criminal defense counsel of trying to taint a jury pool because they made a statement to the media. Hilarious. Because on a daily basis in this country, the prosecution acts in concert with the media to destroy a man the minute he's arrested, or as he's being arrested, or in furtherance of making an arrest. Beating the bushes, trying to get the information out there, trying to get him jammed up, trying to get everybody to recognize his face so they can help arrest the guy. Or they've already arrested him, and so now they're just trying to completely destroy the man's reputation in the media. Prosecutor, who do you think gives all of this to the media? It's the cops and the prosecutors. How else would the media get all of this? The cops give it to them. That is how this happens. So when a prosecutor accuses a defense counsel or a criminal defendant of trying to taint the jury pool because they make a statement to the media, it is laughable. It's laughable because the entire industry is the government giving information, spoon-feeding information to the media so that they can run with it. Knowing that if it bleeds, it leads, that the media always needs new leads, that they are dependent upon prosecutors and cops to put forward all this quote-unquote news. It's an industry, folks. And it is asymmetrical warfare at best, but in reality, it's a massacre. The government has a lockdown on Lawfare. So that is your lesson today in Lawfare. Maybe we'll talk about asymmetrical lawfare later on. We're going to have to, because things are it's a dark period right now. Not to sound too negative today, but it's a dark period. For law, not politics. Politics is doing great, by the way. So let's go to the chat here. Howdy from Washington. Hey now. Was Nixon pushed out because of Alger Hiss? Great question. I think in large part, yes. But let's not forget Vietnam and all of the other ways that he was just trouncing liberals left and right. Alger Hiss was the start of it, sure. However, funny enough, it's unbelievable to think about now. Listen to Pat Buchanan's book on Nixon, right? Nixon destroyed Alger Hiss, and I want to say it was ABC. It was one of the networks, but I'm pretty sure it was ABC. Did some sort of quote-unquote documentary, and Alger Hiss was in it. And Alger Hiss said something bad about Nixon, who was at that point president. And all of the other media outlets at that time ganged up on, again, I believe it was ABC, if I recall correctly. They all ganged up on these guys and said, how dare you run something by this known communist who is a convicted criminal, making a defamatory statement or even a negative statement about the President of the United States. Are you guys insane? It's amazing to think that there was such a climate in American media back then. So, yeah, I mean, maybe he was pushed out because of Alger Hiss, because of all the communists in government at the time. But not the media, I don't think. I think also Alger Hiss was early on, and a lot of the more immediate cause was, Vietnam and all of the, attacking the Democratic Party, all the more recent issues. DeSantis wants to run, says Chase. Yeah. Right. This is not a political show. I can't talk about DeSantis. Doing great. He's doing great. Good evening from Ireland, Augustus. Hope you're doing well. Thank you, Robbie Lucy. Awesome, man. Good to see you. This program is probably illegal in Ireland, but good you're here, man. Arete, says Dr. Ostify News. That means excellence in Greek for the uninitiate. Glad to catch you live. Yes, awesome to be here on a Friday. I'm glad we're doing the afternoon shows because night just wasn't happening, man. Bloomington, Seamus checking in. Robbie is saying that there's a similar dynamic with the UK and Irish mainstream newspapers. The columnists present themselves as experts in their analysis. Yeah, that's how it goes. As long as you're on the screen, people assume you are an expert. You could put whatever you want in that scrolling marquee. You put up anybody on the television, and everybody assumes that guy knows what they're talking about. It's just a freak thing about human nature. I do remember a study of gorillas where they showed that what's the difference? That's the whole point of the study, right? That people are primates. It was a study where they showed that gorillas, if you gave them a photograph of the alpha male of the most, in charge, like basically celebrity of that pack, herd, tribe, whatever you call a group of gorillas, you give them that photograph, they will prefer looking at that photograph to eating. And that is a primate thing to do. We see a celebrity and it's just hardwired to follow that person, to lose sleep and forsake food to follow that alpha, right? Weird thing about not even psychology, just biology, I guess. So, any recent states' rights cases come up that intrigue you, Augustus? And greetings, Agatha. States' rights cases. Well, I don't know, man. States' rights died at Appomattox. I don't know. Florida has been killing it. Everybody made fun of us for years and years. Now you all want to move here to Florida, don't you? But as far as cases, I don't know. There was one case that was interesting. The Navy SEALs, well, not like as a group, but several Navy SEALs sued Biden about the COVID mandate, the vaccine mandate, and won. Not states' rights, but I guess that doesn't really come up much anymore. There was one, however, I do recall reading an article about a federal judge saying that Texas enforcing the border, rounding up illegal immigrants and sending them back, or at least just detaining them, that was an illegal infringement upon federal prerogatives. I did not get that article for today, though, so I don't want to talk out of my hat. That's the only states' rights case that I can think of off the top of my head, Ulfric. Cayman Miles, your Malcolm X speech is the opening of an album I'm working on. Nice. Mysticaria radio days. God bless. Yes. Well, those days are far behind us. We love Big Brother now. It's over. We just read the news. Talk about law. But do send me your album, man. I'd like to hear that one. And if it's not copyright, maybe we could play it on the program. I heard Shaq say every time he goes to the zoo, the alphas want to fight him, says John Arnott. That's awesome. I saw Shaq once when I was a little boy. He was in front of me at the drive-thru at McDonald's here in Orlando. That was back when he was on the Orlando Magic. Yeah, Shaq's the man. All right, so we talked about Lawfare. What's it? Oh, my friend is calling me. He's clearly not aware that the podcast is on right now. We'll probably listen to it later. So we talked about Lawfare. We talked about Kelly Clarkson. That was the most important thing. We also got the National Terrorism Advisory and prison infrastructure. So let's talk about terrorism first, right? Oh, how about that? Homeland Security has just given me a notification. You have been selected to participate in a brief survey about your experience today with DHS.gov. Why not? Yes, I'll give feedback. What an interesting diversion. This is like a choose-your-own-adventure course. How would you rate your overall experience today? Outstanding. What information were you looking for today? Border management, contact information, contracting opportunities, cybersecurity, disaster assistance, email, RSS feeds or subscription services, forms or publications, human trafficking, immigration and citizenship, information about DHS, leadership, history, etc., jobs or career information, law enforcement, news, photographs, small business resources. Wait, DHS has small business resources? I learned something today. Training, travel, videos, other, terrorism advisory. Well, who else? Why does anybody else visit a Homeland Security website? I thought terrorism was what they did. Were you able to complete the purpose of your visit? Yes, I was. Would you still return to this website if you could get this information or service from another source? Yes, because I prefer primary sources. Will you recommend this website to a friend or colleague? Yes, because I hope you all prefer primary sources as well. 6. Which one of the following best describes you? Business representative, educator, federal government employee, first responder, law enforcement official, government contractor, international visitor, job seeker, media representative, nonprofit staff or volunteer, seeking citizenship or immigration information, state, tribal, territorial, local government representative, student, traveler, or other. I guess in today's work. I am a media representative. I'm on a podcast. 7. Please describe your experience finding your way around dhs.gov today. Encountered 0 difficulties. How was your experience using our site search? Did not use it. Thank you for your feedback. Okay, well, that was a lot more boring than I thought it was going to be. Anyway, DHS issues National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin. This was actually last week, on Monday. Today, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas issued a National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin regarding the continued heightened threat environment across the United States. This is the 5th NTAS bulletin issued by the Department of Homeland Security since January 2021. So think about that. In a year, they have issued 5 terrorism advisory bulletins. Biden takes office, and within a year, there are 5 of these bulletins. It shows you where the priorities are, at least. This replaces the current bulletin that was set to expire tomorrow. That was last Tuesday. DHS remains committed to proactively sharing timely information and intelligence about the evolving threat environment with the American public, said Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. We also remain committed to working with our partners across every level of government and in the private sector to prevent all forms of terrorism and targeted violence, and to support law enforcement efforts to keep our communities safe. That reminds me, we've got to talk about Kim Potter. I'm going to move that to the next article. This NTAS bulletin outlines the key factors that have increased the volatility, unpredictability, and complexity of the current threat environment, and highlights resources for individuals and communities to stay safe. What do you think it is that has increased the volatility, unpredictability, and complexity of the threat environment concerning domestic terrorism? You already know what it is. The United States remains in a heightened threat environment fueled by several factors, including an online environment filled with false or misleading narratives and conspiracy theories, and other forms of mis, dis, and malinformation, MDM. They have made an acronym to combine misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, MDM, introduced and or amplified by foreign and domestic threat actors. These threat actors seek to exacerbate societal friction, to sow discord, and undermine public trust in government institutions, to encourage unrest, which could potentially inspire acts of violence. Mass casualty attacks and other acts of targeted violence conducted by lone offenders and small groups acting in furtherance of ideological beliefs and or personal grievances pose an ongoing threat to the nation. So unpack what that actually says. What it's saying is there are people out there spreading ideas on the internet that are hostile to government. That is the biggest threat right now. Because those people are spreading those ideas, creating this environment online that is hostile to government and sows, what was it, societal unrest? Societal something. Discord. Sow discord. Exacerbate societal friction. So if you create an environment like that where you're saying hateful things like the vaccine is poisonous and kills people, or you're saying hateful things like, support the Canadian truckers and down with Trudeau, or you're saying hateful things like, so 12% of the population commits 50% of the crime. You say things like this, and it exacerbates that societal friction. And then if someone who is unstable goes out and shoots somebody, that's on you, because you have been spreading this MDM around. Effectively, that means the government has made, impressive, really. It's an impressive use of language here. To say, who even talks about the First Amendment anymore? I remember back in 2016, 2017, going into 2018, people would talk about the Constitution, First Amendment this, freedom of speech that. Nobody even talks about that anymore. Nobody even bothers to talk about that anymore. It's gone. It's over. And now you have this Soviet Union style, I don't even know what to call this Soviet Union style, it is a bulletin, but language that makes it sound, well, of course we don't want this. We don't want lone offenders and small groups acting in furtherance of ideological beliefs and or personal grievances to pose an ongoing threat to the nation. We got to shut that down. It's genuinely impressive the way they word this, so that you think, well, of course, we can't have MDM. We can't have misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation that would lead to public shootings or other violence in furtherance of ideological beliefs. God, no. While the conditions underlying the heightened threat landscape have not significantly changed over the last year, the convergence of the following factors has increased the volatility, unpredictability, and complexity of the threat environment. 1. The proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. I like it. I gotta say, it's brilliant. They just are outright, no holds barred, saying, you are attacking the government. You are saying bad things about the government. You are a terrorist. When I was growing up in the Cold War, that was Soviet Union stuff. That just absolutely could not happen in America. It was inconceivable that it could happen in America. That was the whole difference between America and the Soviet Union. The proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. I gotta say, man, it's such a dark period that it's genuinely becoming unnerving. Because forget about politics. They're all, come on. They're all tools. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows that all of these politicians are puppets. They're paid off by the pharmaceutical companies. They're paid off by, agriculture. Big agriculture. They're paid off by whoever will pay their campaign bills. They're in somebody's pocket. Who cares about politicians? Retards care about... I probably can't say that on YouTube. That's a strike. That's probably a strike coming my way. Can't say that. But nobody cares about politicians, right? But here we are. Has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with law. Everything to do with the police state that we have created. Everything to do with everything that has happened over the past, 50 years of calling the cops on your neighbors, calling the cops on your own family. Now we have sons turning in their own mothers for being at the January 6th thing that happened. Parents turning in their own children. Husbands turning in their wives and vice versa. What do you think that ends in? It ends in a total police state. Actual totalitarianism. We're there, man. We are there. And I'm probably going to get, of all the things, I'm going to get a strike for using the R word. Unbelievable. The proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. That is the first and foremost complaint in a terrorism bulletin issued by the Department of Homeland Security. Think about that. Number 2, continued calls, and this, legitimate, Continued calls for violence directed at U.S. critical infrastructure, soft targets, and mass gatherings, faith-based institutions such as churches, synagogues, and mosques, institutions of higher education, racial and religious minorities, government facilities and personnel, including law enforcement and the military, the media, and perceived ideological opponents. Now, let's assume that is 100% true. There's nothing to poke holes in there. Let's say, taken at face value, that is accurate, and that's a problem. Why is that second in line to saying bad things about the government? If there are continued calls for violence against this person, that person, churches, synagogues, racial minorities, government facilities, ideological opponents, if there are calls for violence, why is that second in line to a misleading narrative about the government? That, again, shows you where the priorities are for the Department of Homeland Security. And number 3, calls by foreign terrorist organizations or attacks on the United States based on recent events. So that makes sense. If you're going to put calls by foreign terrorist organizations after continued calls for violence within the U.S., yeah, I could see that being second in line. But again, number 1 is saying bad things about the government. We are going to go over time today. DHS and the Federal Bureau of Investigation continue to share timely and actionable information and intelligence with the broadest audience possible. You know what? This is what I'm going to do. You've gotten the meat of it. I'll send you the potatoes. How about that? I'm going to post this in the chat here. It's going to load again. Probably talking about, yep, there we go. It's talking over myself. All right, I'm going to post this terrorism advisory into the chat so y'all can read the rest at your leisure. What? Victoria's Secret has their first Down syndrome lingerie model. Good for them. Good for them. Good for them. Thank you, Coach Alpha Elite, for letting me know that. By the way, Coach, I remember you were going to send me an email. I might have missed it. If I did, I'm sorry. If you did not send it, please do send it. One way or another, let's talk. Let's see. The one thing outstanding I wanted to talk about, well, there were 2 things really. One, The Intercept did an entire series, which is to say 3 articles. To me, that's pretty in-depth, especially because The Intercept, when they do get something right, they get it excellent. So they did 3 articles on prison conditions. The first is called Dark Smoky Cells. As wildfires threaten more prisons, the incarcerated ask who will save their lives. And the article is about how these prisons out where there are wildfire threats, there's no plan to evacuate them. You know, if a wildfire gets out there, sorry, bud. You landed yourself in prison. I guess just die. You know? The prison infrastructure in this country is such a diabolical scheme, it would blow your mind. And that's why I'm going to share all 3 of these articles with you. So that one's about the threat of wildfires to inmates. The second one, oh, that's the name of the series, Climate and Punishment. Obviously, after my own heart. Boiling Behind Bars is the second one. In sweltering Texas, prisons without air conditioning are about to get a lot hotter. You might, be thinking, so what? They're in prison. Why are we concerned about them getting air conditioning? Right? It's like this urban legend about, well, these guys, they got their gyms, man. They get to bench press and they get all these amenities. They're probably getting massages in there, man. They get to do whatever they want. No, man. I don't know where that came from. But prison sucks. It is a bad place to be. Jail sucks. You are not there on vacation. It's not fun. You don't get to just lift weights and do cool stuff all day. It sucks, man. So I think people need to be disabused of that notion real fast. When it comes to air conditioning, yeah, okay, maybe if you're in prison, you've been found guilty and convicted. Let's say there are no problems with the evidentiary process, no problems at all with the legal processes here in this country. No problems, right? Like nobody's ever been exonerated after spending 50 years in prison before. Just assume that the system works, right? Yeah, maybe they don't deserve all the creature comforts in life. And maybe they could deal with some hot weather. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about, well, it's 86 and you don't have an air conditioner. Sorry, buddy, but you're going to have to sweat through that. We're talking about like 100 degrees. We're talking about Texas in the summer with no air conditioning, and it's really bad. And if you haven't been to jail or prison before, just trust me, the temperature is bad. And so they keep it freezing in there. So you got one problem or the other, right? I mean, it's perhaps deliberately uncomfortable. But if it were just uncomfortable, then we could rightly say, who cares? Man up. But no. All but 8 days of June 2018 saw the heat index rise above 110 degrees. The blood pressure medicine Phillips takes to treat a rare kidney condition made him ill in high heat, so he would skip doses. At times, he said, guards failed to escort him to take his other medications. That's another problem in jail and prison, is medication. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get somebody else's medication. They're not nurses. Sometimes, okay, there are nurses, but in some places, it's the guards handing out the medication. And even when they are nurses, they mix up the medication. Even when you're not in prison, when you're in a hospital, they mix up the medication. So if you're going through that, people are mixing up your medications or not giving you medications or giving you your medications and it's 110 degrees, that's a problem. And the prison system in America is something where we just throw people away and they're out of sight and out of mind and nobody cares. And these things have been getting worse and worse and worse with every year. And this is big money. People talk about the pharmaceutical industry in the media. There are lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies for billions of dollars. No one ever talks about the prison industry and how much money people make on each prisoner and how much money is tied into sending people to prison. How much money has been made off of mandatory sentencing. The third article is trapped in the floods. With floodwaters rising, prisoners wait for help in floating feces. Flooding is also a serious problem. And I think this is the one where they make the point that all of these prisons, all these prisons that we have, all these prisons with all these flooding problems, etc., they were all built in part of this prison boom. When we started this phenomenon of minimum mandatory sentences and everybody was going to prison, whether the judge wanted to do it or not, they created all these prisons without actually thinking ahead, like, what's going to happen here if we have a flood? What's going to happen here if there's a wildfire, right? All they did was they just built the building. So, I posted all of those articles in the chat there. You guys are welcome to read them at your leisure. Oh, and minimum mandatory sentences, I should probably explain. That is a legislative thing. So the legislature, the Congress of whatever state you're in, they get together and they say, well, for trafficking X grams of heroin or whatever, we're going to give you a minimum sentence of 20 years, minimum mandatory sentence. What that means is it's out of the judge's hand, right? The judge has no say in what you can be sentenced as far as the minimum. If it's your first offense and you are convicted or you take a plea to X amount of grams, right? And the sentence for that in the law is 20 years, judge can't do a thing about it. Doesn't matter if it's your first offense, doesn't matter if you're 18 years old, Doesn't matter what the facts of the case are if you were pushed into it. It doesn't matter if there are mitigating factors. Doesn't matter, whatever it is. You were convicted or you took the plea. Your minimum sentence is 20 years. Judge has to sentence you to 20 years. It's out of his hands. It's insane. The point of these laws was to push low-level drug offenders to turn on the higher drug offenders so that they could get the big guys, right? Kind of like RICO was initially about shutting down the mafia, which, whether it exists or not, or did exist, I'm agnostic about. But it's clear that the minimum mandatory sentencing, as well as RICO, all of these things that had an initial intention about them, that initial intention has clearly failed. Or it has evolved to some other monster. So we see RICO now being used against everybody and their brother. Everybody. You can use RICO for any reason, or at least threaten people with RICO. Use it against anybody. Political enemies, whatever. It doesn't necessarily, it's not, now that the mafia is allegedly destroyed, they still kept RICO. Right? It's like the toll roads, Well, yeah, we'll just keep this toll road up for 20 years till it pays for the road, and then we'll get rid of the toll. Not. Then they keep the toll, and they put that money you can't shut down a moneymaker like that. You're going to keep it. Same with RICO. You don't give the government power like we gave them in RICO, and they just, oh, well, mafia threat's over. Let's just get rid of RICO. No way. Or the Patriot Act. Well, let's just give the government all these powers with the Patriot Act, let them do this, that, and the other, and then, as soon as the war on terror is over, they'll get rid of the Patriot Act, right? It'll go away. We'll have our rights back. Hilarious. Same thing with minimum mandatory sentences. Even when it has been demonstrated to be a massive, colossal failure. I look at the drug industry here. Has it gone anywhere? Have minimum mandatory sentences stopped the drug epidemic in this country? Has it put away all those evil drug dealers at the top? No. It has wrought wholesale destruction on American families by putting men away for decades. Decades because of drugs. And it never, ever has even, nobody's even pretending that it works in the way it was initially intended to work. But we keep it because, as I said, there's a massive industry for the private prisons here in America. We are well over time. This just came out, and I feel like we should talk about it, at least briefly. Maybe we'll talk about it more next week with Tiger. Kim Potter, the ex-cop convicted in Dante Wright's death, is sentenced to 2 years. This is on NPR. It's in a special series, America Reckons with Racial Injustice. I have to admit, if you were on this show, you heard us make fun of Kim Potter when this first happened. We've said some impolite things about lots of people. This is the woman who ran up on this guy because he was being handcuffed. He Houdini'd out of it, jumped in his car, and was trying to drive away. And this woman freaked out, this police officer. She freaked out, drew her sidearm, and said, "Taser, taser, taser." You can hear how like she's never been punched in the face or anything. Like she's never had any kind of trauma in her life or had to dealt with any kind of stress. Just freaking out unbelievably, screaming, "Taser, taser, taser." Pulled her sidearm, shot the guy. Right? Media had a field day with it. So did we. For different reasons, possibly. They're saying this is a racial thing. White woman cop shoots a black male. Clearly it had nothing to do with race. Everybody's seen the video. CNN played the video. Everybody's seen it. Clearly a failure of training. Clearly one of those things we have to question. Why are women in law enforcement at all? Why are women put in these situations to begin with? Why are there so many cowards in law enforcement that the first thing they think to do is draw their weapon or their taser, or that they would confuse the two under pressure? We've given all this power to the police state. And Kim Potter is now the latest victim of it. Dante Wright was one victim. Now Kim Potter's a victim. And we just grind up these bodies in this gear of the apparatus. We just, one after another, we just destroy lives. Now this woman is going to prison for 2 years. 16 months. I think she's already served like 2 months. It's an interesting article because of, well, just listen. Kim Potter, the former police officer convicted of manslaughter in the death of Dante Wright, has been sentenced to 2 years in state custody, a judge ruled on Friday. Potter will serve 16 months in prison with the remainder on supervised release. The sentence was lower than Minnesota's recommended sentencing guidelines, roughly 7 years for first-degree manslaughter, after Judge Regina Chu found there to be mitigating factors in the case. Potter has already served 58 days, leaving about 14 months behind bars. Potter, who apparently mistook her handgun for her taser when she fatally shot the 20-year-old black man last year during a traffic stop, was convicted of first- and second-degree manslaughter in a trial in December. Defense lawyers representing Potter had urged the judge to consider probation instead of prison time, or a sentence shorter than the recommended guidelines, which was ultimately what Chu decided. Chu listed factors that she said called for a lighter sentence. That Potter intended to draw her taser instead of her gun. That the scene was chaotic, tense, and rapidly evolving, requiring quick decision-making by Potter. And that Potter's decisions were not driven by personal animosity toward Wright. Officer Potter made a mistake that ended tragically, Chu said. She never intended to hurt anyone. Her conduct cries out for a sentence significantly below the guidelines. So that's what I'm talking about. NPR is pointing out it would be a 7-year sentence under normal circumstances for this manslaughter charge. But the judge has the power to depart from that. The judge can say, there are mitigating factors here. She didn't do this out of animosity. It wasn't about racism. It was a chaotic, tense, and rapidly evolving situation. She reacted. She thought she drew her taser. She actually drew her gun. All these are mitigating circumstances. I'm going to give her 2 years, not 7. If you have a minimum mandatory sentence, judge can't do that. If the law says it's a minimum 10 years, judge can't say, well, there are mitigating factors and, so on and so forth. I'm going to give her 2 years. Can't do that. Minimum mandatory sentence is a minimum mandatory sentence. You get the 10 years. In this case, she departed downward. She gave her 2 years. And now we see the twist in the story, the NPR twist. Wright's parents were disappointed and angered by the sentence. Kim Potter murdered my son, and today the justice system murdered him all over again, Katie Wright told news outlets, including Minnesota Public Radio. We're very disappointed in the outcome. Yes, we got a conviction, and we thank everybody for that, but this isn't okay. A white woman's tears trump justice. Arbery Wright, Dante's father, said that he had been cheated. They were so tied up into her feelings that they forgot about my son being killed, he said, according to NPR. This lady got a slap on the wrist, and we sit around every night crying, waiting for our son to come home. Attorney Ben Crump, who represented the Wright family, said in a statement that the judge's comments at sentencing showed a clear absence of compassion for the victim in this tragedy and were devastating to the family. Again, we've all seen the video. We know what happened. The cops saw that he had an expired registration. They pulled him over. When they ran his license, they found he had an outstanding warrant. They went to arrest him. He tried to escape. What do you think is going to happen? I'm first in line to point the finger at the cops when the cops are out of line. I'm right up there with everybody else, saying we live in a police state, these people are out of control. But if you are trying to escape from the police, and we all saw it happen, I mean, it's not like it was he said, she said, it's on camera. What do you expect to happen? I mean, yeah, I feel terrible for these parents, but parents have to know, like, your son was trying to escape from the cops, you know? That's the reality of the situation. And now this woman is going to prison for 2 years because she lost her cool under pressure and pulled her sidearm instead of her taser. Everybody's messed up right now. Everybody's a victim of this system, including the cop who served the system. Wright's family described their pain and called for the maximum sentence. In court on Friday morning in Minneapolis, prosecutor Matthew Frank pushed the judge to stick with the presumptive sentence rather than a shorter one. The jury found the defendant guilty of this crime, Frank said. It wasn't an intent to kill Mr. Wright, but it was culpably negligent. It represents a higher state of culpability. A departure from the state's sentencing guidelines must be reserved for rare and compelling cases, he said. We don't doubt that Miss Potter has remorse. But this is a courtroom full of pain and anger. How do we fix that? Well, obviously, by crucifying a scapegoat. That's how we always fix it, right? That's how we fixed Charlottesville. That's how we fixed James Fields. We throw 419 years at him, plus life. That's how you do it. What do they give Chauvin again? Man, I wish Tiger was here. Tiger knows everything about the Chauvin case. Crucify the man. Crucify him. That's how we fix it. What can we do? He asks. This is a divided community, Frank said, his voice wavering with emotion. What can be done to help restore some of the faith and trust between law enforcement and the community? In particular, in this case, what can be done to help the Wright family through their pain and their loss? That is something our legal system was specifically designed to fight against. This mob mentality that someone has to be crucified. Something we've been dealing with for thousands of years, if you've ever read the Bible. Crucify him. We're all feeling pain and loss. We all want vengeance. Let his blood be on our hands and on the heads of our children. Just get rid of this person. Maximum sentence. Destroy them. Right? That's why our legal system exists. Is so things like this guy, Frank, is... Who is Frank? Is Frank the attorney? The prosecutor. Oh. Prosecutor Matthew Frank. Well, what else do you expect? He argued that defendants should be expected to show remorse, but that remorse is not enough. We should expect defendants to have remorse for more than what has happened to them. We should expect defendants to have remorse in the sense of a feeling of wrongfulness to others. We've seen some evidence of that, but I submit not enough. In court, members of Wright's family spoke about their painful loss. His mother, Katie Wright, spoke with hurt and anger. You took his future, what he could have been, and it was so many things, she said, brushing away tears. She said she would only call Potter the defendant, after Potter repeatedly called her son the driver during the trial rather than speaking his name. That's interesting. April 11th was the worst day of my life, Katie Wright said. A police officer who's supposed to serve and protect, someone took so much away from us. She took our baby boy with a single gunshot through his heart, and she shattered mine. My life and my world will never be the same. Arbery Wright described how the family has been riven by sadness since Dante's killing. Everything we do as a family ends in tears because all we have is memories left of our son, he said. Kim Potter was trained to prevent this kind of thing from ever happening. She was a police officer longer than my son was alive, he said. I asked that Kim Potter be held accountable and that the maximum sentence be applied, which is incomparable to the life sentence we have been given because of her negligence. My son Dante's life was taken away too soon, and he's never coming back. This brings in different theories of what law means, what justice means, right? This concept of eye for an eye. She took my son. Her life is forfeit. And in a sense, that is justice, right? And as we were saying earlier about the Sicilian vendetta, that's exactly what that means. You killed my son, I kill your son. You kill my dad, I kill your dad. You kill my brother, I kill your brother, and so on and so forth for thousands of years. That's the vendetta. Our entire legal system is based upon cutting that out. Saying we don't believe that is justice. We believe justice should be proportional. We believe that justice should be retribution, sure, but also rehabilitation. It should be taking someone out of society, putting them on ice for a while so they can't commit more crimes or hurt anybody else. They should sit there and think about it, rehabilitate. We have different reasons for putting people away. And it's not always just destroying someone's life because they destroyed yours, right? Retribution is actually probably last on our list in terms of justice in the American legal system. Anyway, we are way over time. Way over time. And it's been a journey, guys. It's been a journey. I think we're going to end here today. Let me check out the comments here in the chat. Look to the description, please, and subscribe to all those social media channels because YouTube's probably going to ban this episode and give us a strike after I illicitly used the R word. It's my understanding that the mafias in the U.S. are of that special tribe, says Coach Alpha Elite. Agatha Faust, a friend from grade school, became a cop. I didn't know she'd become a cop. She showed up on a call. She's about 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, uniform falling off her. I was like, what are you going to do? Yeah. My friend, who's a big guy, my height, but outweighs me. I mean, big guy, like bouncer big. His whole thing on the Chauvin case was, look, we shouldn't let little guys be cops, basically, because little guys have to use severe force. Otherwise, they are not in control. A big guy, like a bouncer, he has the guy in an arm lock or a blood choke or whatever, and, the smaller guy, he's not getting away. Big guys are very comfortable using force. Little guys, they got to get buck wild, like a white belt wrestler coming into jiu-jitsu. They just gotta show how tough they are. They gotta put everybody down. They gotta break people's legs, because otherwise you're not in control, right? So if you have a 5 foot tall, 90 pound female officer showing up to a call, and you've got this guy trying to kill her, or she thinks that he's trying to kill her because she's terrified because she's a little 5 foot tall, 90 pound girl. What do you think's going to happen? She's going to draw her sidearm, think it's a taser, and shoot the guy. Which is not what happened in this case, I'll say. I don't think there's any evidence. I don't think anybody even alleged that this kid was drawing a gun or looking for a gun or anything. It looked to me like he was just trying to drive away. So completely different situation. But think of somebody like Chauvin. Like, you've got this massive guy, George Floyd, and you are a little guy, Derek Chauvin. You got to pin this guy to the ground. He's not letting him up. It doesn't matter if he's saying, I can't breathe. It doesn't matter if he's going to go into cardiac arrest. It doesn't matter. Like, you are half this guy's size. You can't let him up. He could walk all over you. The police are untrained. Tom DeBlast talks about it all the time. Lots of guys in jiu-jitsu talk about it. Cops are simply untrained. They get scared. Maybe it's uncharitable of me to call them cowards. It's probably not right. But it's very true, they are untrained, and they panic because of it, and they draw guns because of it, because they're scared. So this is a real systematic problem. Anyway, John is saying combat experience only. Yes and no. One point I've made repeatedly is that I think this whole business in Afghanistan and Iraq has been to train our own people to come back and police us. They repeatedly say this is not a war out there. This is a police action. These guys in Guantanamo Bay, as we talked about on this program, these guys are not, warriors. They're not soldiers. They don't get rights like we're at war with them. This is a police action. And these people are just criminals. So they come back with that same mentality. Now they're cops. They've been over in Afghanistan for years. Now I've got cops on the stand talking about how they're doing tours in Pine Hills. They're doing tours in an Orlando neighborhood like they're doing a tour in Iraq or Afghanistan. So combat experience can also be, bad news, because they start treating Americans as though they are in occupied territory, right? So a lot of problems with law enforcement today. I don't know where to even begin. I guess we should all just be praying for them. Anyway, let's see where Tiger's at next week. Actually, we might not be able to make next week. I don't know. But we'll check in with you later, guys. Stay in school. Don't do drugs.